Hey everybody, welcome to episode 36 of Tactical Crouch. Feels like just yesterday, because it basically was just yesterday that we did an episode. But hey Joe, how's it going, dude?
Hi, how's it going, guys?
Dude,
not
like
breaking the Google document, not me.
You're chipper this morning, man.
Yeah, I woke up like weirdly early. Like I got up, I went to bed like at a decent hour, woke up at like 6 and was like, all right, ready to start the day. Here we go. Let's, oh, you're a saint for fixing that for me. You can, this is some like peek behind the curtain production stuff. I'm sitting here taking questions from chat, breaking the Google document, and John's on the fly fixing it because he's that much of a boss. So enough about how my day started. Yiska, how are you this fine evening? Or after?
Oh, I'm good today. I wasn't good yesterday.
Yeah.
Actually, dude, okay, so the last episode, I've infamously drank like a bottle of wine during the show, and then I legitimately forgot I had a blood test approximately like 8 hours later.
Yeah.
And that
you kept it together well on the show, but the second we got off air, you were gone. You were a very tipsy lad. There was onions bitten into. There was, lots of...
That was actually so much worse the next day than the alcohol. Like, you go to a doctor and, I don't know, I was raised like, okay, the amount of body odor you're allowed to have in a doctor's office is all-time low in your life. You better not do that. My mom works at a doctor's office. And I'm like, oh my God, how do I get rid of this? And I'm Googling, like, what can you do against, like, onion breath? And it was embarrassing, yes.
He was drunk to a point where he's like, I need to eat something. And I'm like, what do you got? Like, maybe make a sandwich? He's like, no, I have an onion. And that's all you heard was just him biting into an onion. And he wasn't like grimacing. There was no like verbal cues that like, oh, this is terrible. I don't like this. He's like, this is all I have.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next GM in Overwatch League, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
But by the way, you know who does that without drinking alcohol? Baroy.
Actually?
He just likes it. Yeah.
I think pandas like onions, though. I think that's like a panda thing.
That's so bizarre.
Yeah.
Where are the bodies, Baroy? Where are they? That seems very strange.
Yeah. It's I don't know if I classify Baroy as the most normal person I know.
He's a special boy.
He's a character.
That's one way to put it.
If you didn't get to
lovingly,
very lovingly, if you didn't get a chance to tune into episode 35, it's a long one, but it was really funny, really insightful, especially into just kind of the like what an analyst does and what the current landscape is. I mean, and Baroy isn't like, I've known Baroy for a while. He's not an arrogant dude, like in the sense that he's relatively, if he's going to say something,
he means that.
He means it, and he has to kind of believe it a lot, and there not to be a lot of space for error to say it. And he's just kind of like, I am the best person in Overwatch League as an analyst. Like I just am. And he said that and really qualified it really well. Talked about what he does and what Defiant do really well, what other teams maybe don't do well. And it was really fascinating. So definitely give that a listen, because it was really great. And I don't think that there's any content out there with Baroy's name on it or elsewhere that gives such like a transparent dive into.
Yeah, that is very much unabashed, pure essence of Baroy. That whole episode was just like how he is on a daily basis. Like goofy,
sitting in the dark,
but like some of the most intelligent conversations with a person you'll have. But a goofball through and through.
Total goofball. Like goes from like quantifying all these statistics and then putting on a panda suit, and then like it's he was gonna have a little gift for us ready for this show, but we're gonna have to wait until next show. So so make sure to check that one out. Other housekeeping things really quick. Make sure to follow the show on Twitter at @tactical_crouch. Tweet us your questions and topics you'd like to have discussed for the show. Today's a really great one. Since we just had a show a couple days ago, there's a ton of time that we can address your questions. So make sure to post those in Twitch chat. Otherwise,
I'll be watching
tweet them
you, chat.
at us. The show does record live every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. We've been really good at being consistent with that.
Mm-hmm.
Since people are like, I wish you guys would do
That's
it more
what the people want.
consistently. We're men of the people. And last but not least, you can watch and listen anywhere podcasts can be heard, as well as on YouTube. So make sure to check those out as well. Cool. All right. News. Just for those who haven't heard the other episode or aren't going to listen to it because it's not a Prime episode, Nate Nanzer stepping down, going to lead esports at Epic Games. That's going to be for Fortnite and Rocket League, at least. So we discussed that a little bit. We're not going to discuss it really anymore on the show, but we acknowledge that happened, and we're not skipping over it. We just discussed it on a different episode. Pacific Showdown done, right?
Yep, Pacific's done.
How'd that end up? How'd your picks
to be
go?
expected? To be expected.
By who?
There was nobody from the community that you're referencing that was saying that China was going to win. Just wasn't going to happen.
Win against talent, though, right?
Yeah, no, that's unacceptable. 100%. that's a meme.
Yeah, I remember. I'm not sure how that conversation went. I remember like a conversation where you went like, you're so ignorant about Pacific, aren't you? You just think Koreans are going to win and make it to the final. I was like, yeah, damn straight. And then you didn't further comment.
I mean, this is also the person who decided to bet me that Chengdu wasn't going to be a halfway decent team and that Houston was going to buy their way into being
the shift key throw is coming, my friend.
Yeah, it's how the turntables, time's a circle.
Well, how the turntables.
Yeah,
that's actually one of my favorite episodes, I think, of The Office. That one, our balls are in your court. Yeah, so cool about that. Winner is Element Mystic, right?
Good old Elemental Mystic. Yeah, they apparently there was a post on Chinese social media where journalists and people in the community could ask questions, and funnily enough, they seem very confident in beating everyone in the Overwatch League that are not named the Titans and Shock. They're very confident in saying that they would.
Element Mystic are top four. They think that they're a top 4 team in the world. Basically, is what they're saying.
That's what they think. They're very confident. They want to continue. They I think another answer was that they wanted to have like the fastest match record ever. Like they're just feeling themselves, and with what they're putting up, you can't blame them.
I'm not even convinced they're the best team in Korean contenders. I just want to. That's the problem with like repetitive scenarios, and I think Runaway looked much higher level on goats, less exploitable, and I also think there was a distinct difference. And yes, you can make an opponent look worse than they are, and that is a quality. I just like to have that confirmed. I still think Runaway is the best.
With that, the end of their season, I don't know, that match, like in the regular season to end, I think it was the last match of the regular season between them and Runaway, that seemed pretty decisive, where they just had no idea what to do with Doha on some. They were pulling out McCree, they were running DPS comps, which is not something that Runaway tends to do. I think they got exploited, and I think that leading into that playoff patch that they were not prepared at all. So, like, is it as much as, them choking? I don't think so. I think they just were caught off guard by a lot of these different styles, by the Sombra especially. And no, I don't think countering Sombra is all that hard. I think teams need to look elsewhere. I think they're a little bit too set in their ways. I think they need to look at Overwatch League. I think they need to maybe even consult other regions on how to beat it, because I don't think it's that difficult, and we're seeing that proven in the Overwatch League. So it's very strange to me that people are coming up and saying that Sombra is hard to deal with.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Do we want to scratch that Europe Western contenders against Korean contenders topic?
You mean the non-old people? The non-old geriatric style of goats actually doing well? Yeah, I mean, you could if you want.
Yeah. So, okay. I'm not 100% convinced that we have any solid evidence that should definitely push you towards one particular opinion, right? What I am confident of is that both of those stances are reasonable. So it is reasonable for Opti based, and not just Opti, by the way, but a lot of Western coaches, and by the way, also some Korean coaches that I've talked to, that the style that Element Mystic plays is suboptimal, and it has been proven to be suboptimal, hence why we don't see Shock and Titans play that style whatsoever, and they will crunch it. And now this, of course, doesn't prove that EU or NA would win against Element Mystic in that regard, right? But I still think the consideration of that is worthwhile, while at the same time, we will never have relief of that information, right?
Yeah.
So we will never get to the point where we can say with confidence, and also no, the gauntlet is not a good data point here. Definitely no Overwatch World Cup. Being a good...
I can't believe somebody actually tried to use that as an example.
See, that is so narrative analysis. It's just like, okay, Koreans inhibit this. It's almost like, if you think about it, it's like some Da Vinci Code reasoning. Koreans on this one, they all grew up in the same country. They therefore eat the same animals. Their mother's milk is therefore has the same ingredients, which therefore force them to all play goats perfectly in very many ways and have dialects of goats that are all equally and then also they time travel, and therefore the qualities of 2016, 17, and 18 still apply. And it's like, come on, man. At least give me a good argument. I understand that the empirical evidence points towards Korea just always being the best in those competitions. But keep in mind, a lot has changed in those systems since then. I think we've imported much of the good qualities from it.
Yeah, hence a lot of the density's been removed, I would say.
Yes, and most definitely the coaches, I think
that's the most sought
fat
after
one, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest problem, is that there's not enough facilitators and teachers in the region. There's never been a discrepancy of talent. There's always talented players in Korea, but it's who's guiding them, who's leading them, how are the rosters being built. That's where Korea's falling behind, I think.
Yeah, so it's also fair to say that Element Mystic would have the ability to adapt to this on the fly, maybe, I don't know, based on historical data, but it's like, yeah, my bottom line really is the conversation is fun to entertain. It is definitely not worth shitting on anyone's opinion for.
No.
And I think having the discussion is definitely fruitful, and we will sadly not see any resolving of that issue, because even the gauntlet doesn't have that. Like, that actually reveals the logical fallacies that some of these people use when they think they got to bring it at the gauntlet. That doesn't matter, buddy. Like, till then, the quality. I don't think we're going to play gods. I'm very convinced we're not. Then, even if we are, who's to say that Element Mystic hasn't been pushed by, for instance, let's say NYXL and Titans scrimming in Korea, and therefore showing Element Mystic that this is not the way to go, and they completely change their style. Then that, the final result would in no way invalidate the opinion that Optic gave. Mm-hmm. So we are going to be blue-balled on this, unfortunately, and it is only a hypothetical in any case. And to be proven, here's one data point where you could be proven wrong. If Loki wins Atlantic Showdown, that is one that will take. Yeah.
All right. And Atlantic Showdown is happening this weekend. So, and you're going to be there, right?
Yes. It starts on Friday, and I'll be there all 3 days, and we'll see. Should be fun.
Bring us that sweet, sweet content. Get us the juice.
Sure. The juice.
Get us the juice.
If you bring Yiska an onion, he may or may not bite into it.
I may produce onion juice. Yes.
Yes.
And pickles.
Do you have what is it? The Atlantic Showdown on Liquipedia. I want to just double check something really quick.
Yeah.
Do you have a personal team favorite that you think is going to win this weekend?
No.
We're looking at Fusion University, Envy, Atlanta Academy, Angry Titans, British Hurricane, and Low Key Esports.
I think the obvious, like a very reasonable and safe bet is to say that maybe Angry Titans continues. Obviously, they won their region in a fairly convincing fashion. Maybe they bring that same level to Pacific and continue to do very well. For NA, it's very weird. Envy just lost their main tank. That Trill being brought to fuel. I can't expect too terribly much from them. I hear stand one's okay, but it's hard for me to put a lot of faith into them. And reviewing Fusion Uni, I'm not that impressed. I don't know that they're going to do that.
They looked mortal, but at the same time, they are also very experienced in comparatively on
100%.
LAN. I think there's a boost there.
They feel a lot like the NYXL. They feel in a lot of similar ways. They have that kind of star player potential with their Zenyatta. They don't seem to be at their peak. Things are going pretty jankily, with in regards to how
jankily. Best one writer in Overwatch Esports, by the way, using the word jankily.
Jankily. It's not as clean as you would expect. Yes, they have that experience. Yes, they have that game 5 kind of like mentality and that fortitude to be able to just approach it just like any other game. But in terms of overall level, I don't know that they're going to do as well as a lot of NA fans assume that they will.
Fair enough. All right. That's your primer. So, yeah, super, super in-depth. Commentators, we got Jaws Leg Day, ZP, and Avast. So, I know that there was originally some concern over who was going to be casting some of these tournaments, Pacific and Atlantic. And so I think, honestly, I got to hand it to Avril and Pixie.
Yeah,
I know them both really well, and so I'm not surprised that they totally crushed it for Pacific. But man, Pacific could have been bad if they didn't have like amazing casters like Avril and Pixie. There was even an appreciation thread on Reddit about it.
Well deserved, because that's literally like 8 hours of work nonstop for like 3 days. Like that's not good for anybody to do, and you're the only people there. So if and there was tech difficulties, and that's totally understandable, and they were consummate professionals, like absolutely standouts. Like again, amazing.
Can I just say this? Like ever since Overwatch League Daily, actually, I was made aware of Avril, and I didn't know who he was before, and then I kept listening to him, and then also got him off mute land. I gotta say, that's one guy I want to see in Overwatch League. Yes, he's a little dry, but I think it is important to get someone that is very competent in understanding the game. Also, he's eloquent, and someone that could have a discussion about things with Sacho on the Discord.
So he was on the Game of Thrones edition of Streamer Showdown that I produced, and so it's very like jokey, memey type stuff. He did great. It was really funny. So he can turn it on when he's given the opportunity to turn it on. So I would love to see that. Pixie, I consider Pixie a good friend, and I always make fun of him because one time on the show he said, what did he say? He said that NYXL are the Shanghai Dragons 2.0 or something like that, and I still make fun of him. And he was making a point about how people were overhyping them. They're going to end up losing a ton and stuff. But I make fun of Pixie for that. But Pixie and Avril are both amazing casters. They're also an amazing duo together. They really kind of bring it out. So kudos and congrats on a huge, successful Pacific Showdown week to those guys, because I know they were stressing out about it. I know both of them, and I think they knew it was at stake too. So kudos there. Yep, that's going to be happening this weekend, May 31st through June 2nd. Double elimination, should be all good stuff all the way through. I'm kind of looking to see if there's any
not as fun as Pacific, guys. I bigged up Pacific as that crazy, wacky, Chinese Pacific. You got some Korean teams pulling out some DPS stuff. Atlantic, that's the more boring region. If you're not a fan of goats, maybe you want to sit this one out. Maybe go watch some Pacific VODs. Reminisce of the old days where people actually played DPS. But there again, if you're a man of culture, goats is your shtick.
I will say there's a chance that we will see some Doom from Hurricane, like they did in the past.
Sure, yeah,
right?
and it definitely has room to pop that out.
Yeah, and in general, I'm not sure if it will be as black and white. I think there's definitely a chance for some DPS comps, but
maybe.
On certain maps. I think these coaches that both of those regions have pride themselves on good prep, and because certain matches are pretty predictable, I think we will see definitely some curveballs here and there, especially in the first round, I think.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah. We need to talk about this. We didn't plan on talking about this. I don't even think that either of the guys have prepared to talk about this, but we need to talk about the impending Optic buyout situation going on right now.
We were just talking about this, so this may just turn into the most of the bulk of the show.
It might. So I'm definitely going to be the casual sitting on the sidelines here a little bit for understanding. So here's my understanding. Optic recently, it is reported, is found to have a $20 million bank note, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
They're in mad debt. There's been a bidding war between Immortals and CEO Hector Rodriguez for the Optic brand. Well, in Infinite Esports, I believe, in general, right?
Yeah.
And this news has kind of come out. Sounds like they have until May 31st of this year to announce a sale. And it sounds like Immortals has won, reportedly, that bidding war. And looks like there may not be an Optic moving forward. Is that, have I summed it up for the layman well enough?
I think for the most part, I skimmed through the article, so I don't know exactly everything, but...
Is there actually a bidding war? Because I remember one article mentioned that there wasn't actually there's just one...
It sounded like...
Immortals.
It sounded like in this most recent Medium post, this person is reporting that one of the former staff members at Infinite or Optic, I don't remember who exactly it was, and Optic Hex were trying to buy back the company and offered a very, from what they reported, insubstantial amount. I think the word they used was laughable to compared to how much debt they were in. So I don't know how much of a bidding war
can be described as laughable, though, can it? So
yeah, definitely.
Realistically speaking, yeah, that's a bummer. I know Greenwall fans out there.
Yes,
not super happy, not having a good month.
No.
I gotta say, Hex might be one of the first owners that seriously regrets going into VC money, because he was printing money beforehand. He had a really well-working brand. I think he might have been an owner that gave up more than others, possibly. I'm not too into that matter. Could be totally wrong. But I think by losing as much powers, I think the brand started to slow down, and I think he just knows how to brand very well. And as it was taken away from him and he took more of a backseat, I think the spiral was quite clear. And that's also once again to show that VC money is not necessarily smart money.
Nope, not at all. Not at all. What is interesting is how exactly this affects the league, how it affects Houston. I know that we kind of chatted about it earlier. You know, what does this mean for the league? Because if they do make a sale, how does the league handle it? Because I don't think that they have rules and fail-safe set in place to deal with a closure of a company and one team owning two separate teams.
I believe they do have something
they?
in place for one organization owning two teams, and so that you can't. So that they would have to sell by a certain date that's been negotiated with. That'll be negotiated with Overwatch League.
Here's, by the way, is where the value of creating completely new brands comes from. Because otherwise, this would be a huge... Like, Immortals couldn't, by the rules of the Overwatch League, acquire Optic Gaming. If Optic Gaming was, in fact, the brand that was the name of the Overwatch League franchise, right? If they made it like that back in the day. Because now you have a fairly discernible entity where you can say, okay, this is Optic Gaming, this is the Houston Outlaws, and sure, there's some overlap, but it's much more divisible and much more sellable than it would have been if we just invited endemic orgs. And in that regard, I actually always liked it, even though it felt very, and to a degree still does, non-organic to me, how these teams were created, right? So, yeah, in general, this is now where we get to have the benefit of that brand creation.
Yeah. Kind of a bummer though, man. I mean, you go from creating this brand new overarching entity in Infinite Esports, bring on a bunch of new staff. Clearly look, get to the point. I mean, remember Rogue, a much smaller organization at the time than Optic Gaming, also put up the money for an Overwatch League team, and for whatever reason, what was not approved by the league. So it really sucks when you see that at least 1 out of 20 of these leagues or team owners are, essentially bankrupt. Keep in mind, it's not necessarily because of the Houston Outlaws that they're bankrupt. So that could be a profit center for them, and the whole Optic part could be bad, or maybe it's just you don't know. But although I don't expect Misfits to be doing much better, just to have a little bit more money behind them.
What about complexity in this regard? Isn't complexity like an esports brand with a long tenure? And they actually recently moved to Texas. Now I don't know if they would technically be part of or set up shop with in the Dallas area. So that might be a problem. And I think they're owned by a sport or sponsored or they have a partnership with
they have NFL money.
Sports team. So unless there's some conflict there, I think it's interesting to consider that. Not that I have any information, but if it was to be complexity, I used to be part of that organization 10 years ago, and the leadership is still the same, and one is a dope person to have as an owner. And I think in general, the Overwatch League could very much gain by getting them on board.
I feel like for something the size and scale of Overwatch League, I feel like they need to really, whatever it is, needs to have backing from huge non-endemics. And I don't know what Complexity's deal is. I don't know if they've got...
I think they're with the Cowboys.
Are they with the Cowboys? Because if they are, then that's great for me looking there. But if it's not, I would immediately look for... baseball, football teams in Texas that have some sort of esports or looking to get into esports, because those are the types of organizations that have shown themselves to be able to kind of have the legs. I think Misfits plus Miami Heat, whatever the Florida organization is, I forget it off the top of my head, is probably the only exception right now where it seems to be a bit kind of hairy as far as like the financial situation goes. But everywhere else, we definitely see those non-endemic esports organizations with huge sports organizations behind them, or VC groups owned by the owner of those teams do exceptionally well. NYXL,
surprisingly
Boston,
enough.
NYXL, Boston, I think Gladiators, is that
They're kind of murky. I think they have a lot of the same people from Phoenix One in League of Legends. I'm not entirely too positive on that, but if my memory serves me, I think they have some. It's like a mix. It's like a hybrid mix of like traditional esports, or at least have some sort of history in esports and outside more traditional
Complexity
real sports.
Complexity are owned by Jerry Jones and the Cowboys. So, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Twitch chat. You guys get a cookie today. Appreciate it.
Would be an interesting brand to kind of see kind of resurge. They were definitely very big in especially North America. Like early 2000s?
Yeah, they were actually
in
one
CGS.
Of the founding teams of CGS.
Yep.
Then they wrote that out. Of course, that's where the famous, Jason Lake clips come from.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, basically they've been in Overwatch League, beta, if you want, like way back when, and still much of the same.
I wonder if that makes him very skittish. I wonder if like looks at this as like, I don't know.
I mean, now he knows there's at least billionaires with him, so he might. And it's also valuable to have a guy around that just A, saw it coming, B, put everything he had into that team in order to have it, like his own personal capital. I think he's a great resource. Also, I think he has, just like as an owner or whatever, in that position, I think he's a lawyer, but he also does a bunch of business. He's more like in the business
sure.
department. I think he'd be a great asset, even just as a consultant for the Overwatch League.
Did you guys see Complexity's new redesign?
Yeah,
their brand redesign.
I'm genuinely kind of sad.
It's kind of sad, but it's totally Cowboys, right?
Yeah, it's Cowboys through and through. Like
that's brand consistency right there.
Back in the day, they were like I want to say like one of the early adopters of like the red, like silver and like black kind of color scheme. Had this weird like abstract circle or oval
that apparently
logo.
They stole from another brand or whatever, or lost a lot.
Yeah, the logo that they have right now is very similar to like a Canadian based team, I think, or at least they were.
Yeah,
it was like kind of orange. I know that they sponsored like a Smash player. That's the only reason why I know they exist. So yeah, I like Complexity. I like Lake. I've heard really good things. But I wonder if like bringing in some of the big hitters in esports right now for the league probably would do better. Like your Team Liquids. Is there anybody else? Anybody else who's just killing it? Maybe 100 Thieves. See what they're doing.
I'd like to see 100 Thieves, man. Like,
I think they do really well. I think that whole, I think that would actually match Houston really well as well.
Yeah.
I think they're very much player focused, brand focused. They want to do the extracurriculars. They want to sell the clothes and make kind of like a lifestyle brand rather than be the best team in the league, right? They want to kind of.
They have the clout of FaZe, but also like the serious business acumen that you need in order to get in with a Overwatch League.
Like at the end of the day, Overwatch League is about selling merch and tickets, right? Like that's what's making money, merch and tickets. So it's finding organizations that know how to sell them both, and we know 100 Thieves can definitely sell merch. So
fantastic at it, and yeah,
I don't know personally if they're able to sell tickets. That's why I'm not saying that they aren't able to sell tickets. I just don't know.
And if Nadeshot's been critical of Overwatch League, that's fine, but I think if you were approached 100%, I think the skepticism of the league starting so quickly and the growing pains that have happened, I think it's very acceptable to be very skeptical.
Also, the type of person that you'd want there in Overwatch League, you'd be like, this is why I don't like it. This is what I would change. This is what
But you can be critical all you want, but if the league comes to you and says, hey, would you buy this for this much, and it's a discount, I don't think any amount of critical thinking would dissuade you at that point. I think business is business, and that's what these people are at the end of the day. So you can be critical to a point, but when does the buck stop,
Yeah.
Yep.
So we'll see. It's going to be very interesting. I don't know. It's going to be weird. It's going to be very weird to see that whole thing happen it's a very good possibility that this happens mid-season, and there's gonna be a weird
I hope so, dude. I have a last ditch effort of not having to call you Lord.
It's not gonna happen, man. I'm sorry, dude. You picked a bad bet.
And I want one less terrible team in Overwatch League. That would also be dope.
I mean, okay, Immortals, the owners of Valiant, are buying Houston. Both those teams are not doing so great.
Yeah.
How does this improve them?
As we realized last week or 2 weeks ago, even if you put their wins combined, they wouldn't make play-ins at the moment. So
another kind of tangentially related, there's a good chance that this stage, maybe even next stage, we finally have like a mathematical team that is not going to qualify for play-in. That's something that I think we can definitely shelve for next week because it's going to be before the start of stage 3. But
we will also likely see Titans be qualified for playoffs.
Yep, exactly the inverse is very true. That no matter what, they could lose the rest of their games, they'll still be within that 7 to 12 like wild card bracket.
Yeah,
and we're just hitting the halfway point. That's crazy.
I think at 6-1 or 5-2 this stage for Titans, I think that's locked in.
Auto qualifies them.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of at the point too, right, where Titans can still do New York was probably the closest last season. Well, they definitely were the closest. I don't know why I would hedge that statement at all, but overall, I mean, the Titans haven't lost a series. Yep. They could be the first 28-0 team.
Yep.
Like, I mean, and realistically, who is challenging the Titans right now? San Francisco.
Shock. That's it. Yeah.
Maybe
NYXL, but like that's a stretch.
Do the Titans play again with the Shock?
Yes, and I believe it's the last match of the season for the Titans.
No, I think the last match of the season for the entire league is Vancouver NYXL. That's literally the last game of the season.
So the last weekend is Shock Titans, NYXL Titans.
True.
Oh, that's a bang.
And that is the Kit Kat rivalry weekend hosted by the LA Valiant.
So if they want that,
is that really what it's called?
They gotta work for it till the last day.
Yeah,
that is crazy. Yeah,
maybe pretty high.
That's gonna be, if they are sitting at 26-0.
That's a great storyline.
And they finish it out against the two best teams. Like there's no point of argument that you can say there.
That's
at that
a mic
drop. It's one thing if they don't play either of those teams for the rest of the season, and but they played the Shock early on when they went 4-3. And beat them, but once you're in the last week of the season, everything's coming up. You got to prepare for the two hardest teams in the week, and you're able to beat them both. That's gonna be huge.
I will also say at this point, it's very hard to convince me, no matter what happens in playoffs, that they weren't the best team in Overwatch in 2019. If that happens,
easily.
How do you? I like. Yeah. Yep. It's not even saying anything. Basically, it's like, yes, that would be true. Let's look a little bit forward here though, and obviously the Titans are doing well, but there probably are some teams who could stand to get off their asses a little bit and make some moves. So I want to ask you guys, are there any teams right now that you're looking at and go, man, you guys need to make some moves, make some changes? And I do have another question. I want to sidestep this whole thing, because right now when we talk about teams improving, the only thing that ever gets brought up is signing new players. Is that the only way for teams to improve in Overwatch League right now?
Sign new players? No. There's a bigger one, I would say, and that's sign a new coach.
And it's probably a lot easier to do so. But I wonder how much. It depends on what role you're filling. I think just restructuring the whole thing and bringing in a new head coach mid-season, that's kind of dangerous, especially if you're a team like the Valiant, like Mayhem, like Houston, that are kind of like, you need some wins. You need something to inspire some confidence going into wildcard or even make wildcard. You've really got to be careful.
So, man, I mean, so first of all, that's kind of a depressing sentiment, I personally think. And the fact that the only way we feel that teams can improve is by making personnel changes, either at the front office level or the coaching level or the team level, rather than being like, you know what, like teams can improve just by themselves. Look at Boston. They didn't make any changes and they improved over the course of the season. Is that a thing? Or is it just like, this isn't working, we're not winning, bye, hi?
I think there's each team has their own reason to talk about like the bottom 5 teams. I think there's a very good reason for each of those teams on why they're not doing well. And I don't think it's based on player skill. It's very much intangibles. That's what I've come to.
It sometimes is.
No, I genuinely think a lot of it is intangibles, because there's no question that a lot of these players are like good, right? There's very few just players that you look at, you're like, why are you here? There's no reason for you to be here. There's like a good handful in the entire league, right?
Yeah.
I'll let Yiska ruminate on that one. There's not too many comparatively. There's not too many,
but there are some that make you chuckle. Yeah.
Oh, of course, definitely.
Yeah, there are some that are really bad.
100%.
There are also some that are most obviously replaceable by better talent and contenders.
Sure.
So if that doesn't fulfill your definition, then that's fine. Yeah. Then
I think a lot of it for me though is intangibles. When I look at Boston and I constantly berate them and say that they're not going to do well, they somehow manage to fill it out. And I think that has a lot to do with things that aren't directly tied to these players' skill, because at the end of the day, I think majority of them are here for a reason. So with these bottom 5 teams, I think each of them has their own story, their own reason on why they're not doing well. And I think you have to make very drastic changes to solve that problem. I think with the expansion into season 2, there was a lot of building done, and that building has to be refurbished and kind of, this didn't work. We tried to lay out this groundwork. The plan failed. Now what do we do? And it's not as simple as just saying, well, they can improve. And we have seen these lower teams improve. Valiant, without making any roster moves, they looked like they were improving.
Yeah, agreed.
The Valiant at the start of stage 2 and the Valiant at the end of the stage 2 were very different. Completely different. They looked like they were on the mend. Now, is that going to continue forward? I would imagine so. How much of an increase can we expect from that? Probably not as much as you'd need to make wildcard. And I think that's the big problem here, is that this is like a season saving move that you're making. This could make or break your season. And by, all metrics, you've already kind of broken it. So there's only really room to go up. So while I agree, I would agree with myself, of course, because I'm biased, that, yeah, you have to be very careful on who you're bringing in, who you're moving out. You really have to be hands-on with the team and figure out what really is the problem. Who do we need to change, and how much money do I need to spend on it? You just have to pay more attention to it. I think that's like my big thing, is really going in, and it's not as simple as just moving players around. I think that's a very surface level move that a lot of these bottom 5 teams can do, and that might save them their season. But again, those same teams are probably going to be making drastic changes coming into the postseason, because there's systematic problems within those teams that you just can't remedy mid-season. And if you do, you could be taking steps backwards to go forward, and you're already at the bottom of the league. So I don't think that's good for anybody.
I would say 2 teams already have revised their entire approach in the Valiant and in the Florida Mayhem by going from hybrid roster to full Korean and going full Western, right? You could even argue that maybe DC did by bringing in more proven talent, other than instead of new upcoming players that they thought they could mold into players, also shelling out big money. Like,
talk about aggressive, man.
Yeah, they are aggressive. Like, their backline should have been pretty expensive, and that is not within the theme of that team, of who the other players are. Maybe with their coaching staff, or
sure.
Wizard Young in particular, but definitely not with the rest in terms of like what one would expect their buyouts to look like. And then, I mean, Houston can't make changes, or we assume they can't. Maybe they will soon. For Houston, it's got to be really hard. And Houston is probably one of the teams that just goes like, about that radical meta change, please. One radical meta change, please. We saw that other Texas teams sort of saved their face last season by getting a lucky patch. Please, stage 4, please.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, that's fair. So, I mean, are there any specific moves that either of you guys would like to see?
I'd like to see Philly make some moves. I don't know where, I don't know who, but they were a problem child for me going into the season that I think they could have improved, and they've just kind of haven't. I think they've kind of been exactly where we expected them. Like, they're so just
vanilla, man. They're just like the most vanilla team out there.
They're not bad enough for you to really criticize them too much, and they're not good enough for you to really praise them. They just kind of are there, and it's like, you guys don't want to make any kind of moves. You don't want to commit to a solid style. It seems like one week Sato's playing Reinhardt well, and then the next they go back to playing Winston. I don't know. It's very bizarre to me. That team is very strange.
By the way, if I look at the overall match score from this season, last season, the similarities between them and Los Angeles Valiant last season are uncanny.
Yep.
Like they had about as equal score if we divide down, look at the win ratio, and then on the Valiant at the back. I mean, they had a very good stage 1, 7-3, not so good stage 2. But that on average puts them at about the Philly score. They were both pretty quiet, even though they had solid scores. I see this continuing. I'm not sure what the schedule for Philly looks like, but I can see them, sneaking by and definitely holding maybe a playoff spot just based on that. It's a quiet season. They just need to either hit a good meta or find the explosion button at some point. Otherwise, they are just going to. It's just going to be as quiet as it was for Valiant. They're unlikely to have a perfect stage in stage 4.
Oh yeah, of course. Like, how I said that there's like teams that have like systematic problems that you don't like, you wouldn't want them to make changes mid-season because like you're gambling if you think you're going to get the same success that this kind of broken roster could still give you. I think London needs to make some sort of changes. Like, their consistency issue is an issue. This is a problem that is going to cost not only the players but that team success when you know that they have the pieces to do so. I think they have to do some restructuring if they want to continue being a top table team. They're kind of being left in the dust. You can't just bring on Quartermain and guard and then never play them.
Yeah, I feel like the discussions that we had, London is so inconsistent, and now coach 815 comes in and fixes that because he has this long tenure in esports, and he can bring like a regular schedule to them,
Sure.
and they
Bring
would
some
get
structure.
I'm not seeing that.
No, not at all.
It's just the same old London. Maybe it's the makeup of the players, or maybe he doesn't have the effect that we expected him to have.
It doesn't feel like he has any authority. If I had to guess, like it just seems like the same old London. It doesn't seem like the coaches are coming in to coach. It feels like they're just analysts and just feeding information to the players, and they just do what they want. Sometimes they do it, and sometimes they don't. Like it's very bizarre, and I think that's a very much a personnel issue that you've just got to figure out, be hands-on and change. The question is, do you do that mid-season? I don't think so. I think with the firepower you have on that team, like that is almost a super team level like roster that you've built, and kudos to Jack and London for doing that. But to be consistently top table and to kind of defend your title and maybe even chase after another title, I think you're going to have to make some moves.
Fair enough. So there is one other thing that we wanted to discuss today before we get out of the show, and that's something that's been on the table and has just kind of fallen off week after week after week. It's like, let's finally talk about it this week, and then we talk about other things. We're actually having time this week, and that is of the idea of a 2-2-2 lock for Overwatch League. Obviously, GOATs is still very much a thing, and there's a lot of people out there who would like to see some enforcement on the compositions that teams can play to balance them better, keep variety higher, even though you're limiting the overall technical amount of compositions that you can have. If you have 1 billion compositions and only 3 are run, is it better to have only 164 and 10 are run, right? Like that's kind of the idea that it's going with here. So we want to discuss a little bit just kind of what roster locks would look like in a 2-2-2 format, or maybe there's a better way to do it, a 2-2-1 floater kind of thing, or whatever. Like there's definitely some variations on 2-2-2 that I've seen that are interesting. I don't know which one of you guys want to go first. It's just like your overall thoughts. Like, are we at a point? Have we reached the point in competitive Overwatch where to continue with the game being fun to watch, being
fun to play,
fun to play, being varied? Part of the core of what was presented with Overwatch is like this varied idea of compositions and counters, and
that's such a cool idea, right? Like the no hero limit, like here's the toolbox, you guys solve your own problems. If you're facing 6 Torbs, what's the composition you do to beat that?
6 Torbs.
Right, you just mirror it. And that's the beauty of Overwatch, is that can be an answer, is just like, we'll just run what they run and do what they do, right? I think Blizzard's realizing that they have to step back from that, and it just didn't work. The freedom of just allowing the player base to figure out their own solutions doesn't work. It's very counterintuitive to the way that a lot of multiplayer games are kind of played. If you are playing a Quake, a Halo, a Call of Duty, you have a very small toolkit, a very impactful but small toolkit, whereas in Overwatch, your toolkit is literally any hero at any point in the game. You can make swaps, and you're supposed to. It's just not... It doesn't work, at least with... Maybe it's the community, maybe it's the player base. I'm more willing to say that it's just a flawed design, and that the lock is just good across the board. Does it limit you? Yes, obviously. But that draws people back into the game. It makes it a little bit more healthy in terms of people enjoying it. I don't have to queue into a game and just play Reinhardt all the time. I can go in and, with 2-2-2, I think it's assumed that we would also get role queue for ladder. And I think that's something that people have been kind of shouting at the heavens for a long time, because there have been defined roles in the past. And to be fair, if you think you're playing GOATs in your ranked games, you're not. I'm sorry, you pick the heroes. You're not playing it the same way. Like you might have a good idea, but it's not goats. You're just picking the heroes that are in goats. You're not playing goats, right? None of the compositions you see on stream, in competition, you pick them in your ladder game, especially like below GM, and even then, I don't know that it's played all that much. Just making that a more unified, streamlined experience, I think, is just healthy for everybody. It's great for the game. It gets people back into it. Tie it in with an event and call it a day. Overwatch 2.0 and call it quits. I hate that that's a thing, but I think it's just the best case scenario for everybody.
So I do have a question for you. You've played World of Warcraft.
I have. Long time.
What are DPS queues like compared to tank and healer queues?
Very long. And it's funny you bring that up, because League of Legends had a similar problem where to queue, you would have two queues. You would queue like your primary role, like I want to play this role, but I also will be willing to play this role. But sometimes if I'm understanding and remembering my League of Legends playtime accurately, there would be times where the game would just be like, sorry, you gotta play support. You gotta play healer, right? You gotta be a tank.
Yeah.
There are gonna be those times, and it's gonna suck. But I think 8 out of 10 times you're going to be playing a role that you're comfortable with. It's going to be great for your experience. It's going to be great for everybody else's experience. And the 2% of the time, dang, I gotta bite the bullet. Or, the age-old discussion of just leaving the game and just dodging and taking the SR loss, maybe taking a 15-minute break, coming back in and playing again. Like, it does nobody any good to just, well, I already have 3 DPS on my team, I guess I go tank. I'm really bad at tank. I don't like playing tank.
No, I think the queue shouldn't work that. I think you should straight up queue your role, either DPS, support, or tank. It should be like in StarCraft 2, where you have different ratings for those. And then you need to solve the different queues with incentive structures, be it drops, be it...
Sure.
Maybe you can even have priority queues
boxes,
for...
credits.
Yeah.
Like priority queue later on for a DPS. Like maybe if
and
you
then again, League does that as well.
If you queue 3 games as a tank, it gives you a priority DPS queue.
Exactly.
Or something like that.
I think that's fair. The separate MMR, the separate like SR, that would be really interesting. I don't know if that would be too hard to develop in such a short amount of time. Granted, like maybe this happens next year. Who knows? BlizzCon, again, it's around the corner. I'd expect some kind of announcement about the game, because it's not going anywhere. It's kind of stagnating, and something needs to be done. Whether it be 222, whether it be, I'm not big. I haven't heard too much about like the floater role. I think 222 is just nice and streamlined. Obviously, hero bans is probably the other big one out there. Like, just let the community balance the game. Just make the heroes balance things on ladder, and just let the competitive community just balance their own games. That could be a thing.
So I do have to ask you though, and this is, the kind of the thing that always gets brought up is, do you think that there's a world that Blizzard could just decide, you know what, we're going to invest in, 10 new balance design positions at Blizzard dedicated just to balancing, and that maybe we see more consistent, more frequent balance changes, and that would... Do you think that there's any world in which we could alleviate having to go to a role lock or a ban system to get kind of that initial vision of Overwatch, which is just kind of this free for all, team based, go nuts type of thing?
I think the opening up more balance slots and making more balance patches really only fixes a lot of the big problems for me at like the competitive level, whereas at the baseline entry level general player, they don't want to play the game because the game isn't fun half the time. They go in, they play a role that they're not good at. It makes the enemy, like, it makes your teammates, you feel when your Reinhardt doesn't know how to play Reinhardt. You feel when your diva is a DPS player and they're just running around like idiots, right? And to assume that they would have the tool set to be able to say, aha, you're playing a tanky composition that can't shoot in the air, so I'll pick Pharah. And you have to be at least competent on Pharah to be able to do that. I think as an idea, it's really cool, but I don't know that it is going to work for the general audience. And I think that's a big place that Overwatch needs to kind of bolster their health. I think bringing people back to the game just would be good for everybody involved. It's great for Blizzard, it's great for Overwatch, and it's great for Overwatch esports, right?
For me, this change is sort of like a change that can snowball into a lot of positive decisions. So, okay, here's the premise of my argument. In no esports game is the game on competitive ladder less resembled than in comparison to pro play than in Overwatch. Mm-hmm. It is insane how different the game is. You cannot infer anything till like, even I think people would even argue that you need to be top 500 for that to occur, right? So how do you make it more streamlined? You take a little bit of freedom away, right? You just lock the roles, and thereby, I think balancing gets a lot easier. What it also allows you to do is, and I don't understand why this has to be like such a staple, but they should, and this is, by the way, something I got from Spazzo, the Funi coach, who said, I hope we just homogenize heroes a little more. Meaning, okay, we need speed in all these comps, but we need speed flavored this way for this comp, or in this way. No, there's just one flavor of speed in Overwatch. Yeah. It is Lucios, right? So there you can do a lot more with balancing because you have a much more rigid framework in which you can then work, right? Mm-hmm. I think it would make the life of balance designers much more, much more laid back. I also think
do we want a life of laid back balance designers? Is that a good thing?
The thing is, like what you said about like throwing more developers at it, I'm not sure if they have a shortage of developers. Maybe they do, and then that's probably a fine thing. There's also the issue of too many cooks. There's also just consult more. Take like what has been happening is, and I think that was fairly public on Twitter, right? That people were going to the Blizzard offices just talking to devs. That has been going on, by the way. There have been fairly regular meetings with a select few pro players that or very frequently talk to devs. And the thing is that probably this feedback is very hard to incorporate with the data they have about how the general Overwatch audience plays, because the games are so different, because we are playing like one healer all the time because people just want to play what's fun. Now, what is more fun in my experience, and also I would say, I think genuinely, not just for me, but as just like a general observation of what is fun, is when you take away all the options that make teamwork way too hard. Like I always said, when someone tells me, oh, I can play D.Va, what do you mean by that? Can you play D.Va in Goats, or can you play D.Va in Dive?
Same thing.
Or can you play D.Va in Quad Tank?
Same thing.
Yeah. That is not the same thing, right? So to streamline that, should sort of create these archetypes, and there would still be different archetypes in these. The double sniper would still exist. Dive would still be very distinct. Mm-hmm. I think we would see more variety than we're seeing now. I think it's very possible that based on the in Overwatch League, based on the particular strength of players in the Overwatch League, we would see more diversity. I have this inkling. I'm not sure if that is very strong. It could just very well be that we fall into this one meta composition once again, and we are all playing, I don't know, McCree Widow on the DPS slots or whatever. That is possible. Still,
but I think that can be changed with numbers and tuning. I think that's changeable.
Yeah. Well, and also balancing. I forgive me, I don't know the exact numbers, but the biggest anti-argument against 222 is currently right now with all the heroes, there's some 10,000 plus compositions that you could. I bet you it's like 100,000 or 1,000,000 or something stupid like that. Of different types of compositions that you could play. But when you reduce it to 222 is something like it was less than 200, I believe. I think it was like 164 or something like that. And that argument is just that you reduce the variety by doing this, which is kind of dumb. And I kind of alluded to it at the beginning. In the beginning, right? Is number one, if you have all these different technical compositions, which by the way, one of those compositions is 6 supports, right? Like that's one of those technical, like that could never actually be a composition. Kick tripod dive can be a composition, just 6 DPS, but 6 supports is ridiculous.
But that's the problem with Overwatch currently, is that that should be a solution to that. That is a solution to a composition that is thrown at you, and you as players have to understand that and kind of like know that. You have to know that, oh, if they run this, we have to change the framework of how we see the game. It's not just 2-2-2. And that's where the average community, the average player base does like, oh, we need to play 2-2-2. They already kind of like have soft locked themselves in their brain. Whereas if you look at the Overwatch League and you look at, competitive ladder in competitive environments, you are seeing them try to change how they view the game. Is it do we play 4 DPS? When do we play 4 DPS? How do we do that? Is the answer 6 supports? I don't know, but I think that is a key to one of those locks. I think that is a composition that at some point in Overwatch is going to have to be run, but that is a solution to a puzzle, right?
Is that an Overwatch 2 solution?
What do you mean?
Overwatch 2, like this
can only be implemented there.
We still hear these, and I know I'm not the only one who kind of keeps hearing these, just the faintest whispers of like Overwatch 2 is coming, right?
Yeah.
And there's this idea that, Overwatch as we know it isn't going to change much. Overwatch 2 is going to come out. They're going to take what they learned from Overwatch 1 and, give us those things that we need in order for Overwatch to be successful, not only as a esport, but also as a game in which we play and rage with each other.
I would say that the 2-2-2 clock is not an issue that needs to be resolved in Overwatch 2. I think that is basic enough that we can implement it now. Now, the issues that we constantly see with ultimates and how counterintuitive they play very often, both in pro play and then actually in ranked, it's exacerbated. That is an Overwatch 2 problem. Mm-hmm. That needs to be solved. And the fundamental idea of how we acquire ultimates, how they work, what they work off of, that needs to be revised and possibly new mechanics introduced. I don't think that can be solved in this current stage. Like the 2-2-2 clock is not the problem. Like if you want to have an analogy, right? Like back in the day, we had all the options. We could, no hero limit. We could all pick what we wanted to do. Nobody is more free under anarchy. It's on paper, it sounds like, okay, everyone can do what they want. Yes, one person can come into your game and kill your entire group of friends dead by taking the game hostage. Because there are no rules, he can do that and destroy everyone's fun by just picking something that is only fun to him. And by the way, most of the time I'm not even buying that. That they have fun in the gameplay. They have fun in the sadistic pleasure of ruining that game. So in order to, just taking that away, and by the way, 2-2-2, we're not in communism yet. In that analogy, right? Don't freak out in that regard. We still have plenty of options. We're just getting the rule sets in place so more people get to have fun in these
Can I also
regards.
just say the fact that we have a system that lets us thumbs up people but not thumbs down people kind of pisses me off.
Well, yeah, that's a whole other bag of worms because we still don't even have actual stats because I don't know, toxicity. That just needs to.
I love that in Workshop there's working versions of scoreboards. Yeah. You can play scoreboards. There is Overwatch does risk there being a time where you have more people playing modded versions of their game than the actual game itself. With how it's kind of stagnated so far.
I think that's a problem with Blizzard in general. Like, they're just so slow at doing things. You know, God bless them, they polish their products to the nth degree. But when you look at Warcraft 3, you even look at like StarCraft in general, like there is a huge community that doesn't even play the game. They just go and play custom maps. They go and play Dota. The MOBA genre was birthed from Blizzard's womb. They just completely it's the redheaded stepchild of Blizzard titles. By rights, that's kind of their game.
Also, dude, it is the many steps in the positive direction. It just fits so perfectly well. We get the workshop, we get replays. Like now 2-2 lock, dude.
We didn't even talk about that. Replays are a thing now.
To redemption.
We didn't even talk about that on the show. Replays are happening, so you've got no one else to blame but yourself now. Casual.
Yeah, it's gonna be fantastic. Like I was excited to see what the community could do with like the World Cup viewer, and we started to get like some hints at that. But I think just giving the tools to everybody forever, like you're not gonna just take it away. It's, you know, when is it coming back? Nobody knows. Oh, it's stage 2, it's stage 1. We still don't have it at stage 3, and now we're finally hearing at least like it's working, guys. Like it's coming soon. I think content goes up. I think overall player skill goes up. Understanding of the game goes up. It's a needed function that we've again shouted at the heavens for, and it's finally starting to come in 3 years later. It's great. It's beautiful. Again, thank you, Blizzard. Thank you so much for finally bringing replays in.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this.
Yeah,
but like to just like mellow out on a good end, right? Because like we do our fair bit of criticizing, but this,
of
like,
course,
one has to. Okay, the cynical part of me says, yes, this is the state of esports, and an esports game that was created supposedly with esports in mind should have shipped with this. At the same time, I know this is hard, especially
those
in
people.
FPS.
Honestly, that idea. Sorry, go ahead.
And I think in general, this is still very welcome, and the things we will be able to do. Like now we actually get the super creatives with like, you know, the replay sets. We get to explain plays more. So the overall level of the, like Isaac said, the level of tier 2 and tier 3 will increase a lot. I think the overall understanding of Overwatch for everyone will increase based on that, because the surrounding content will be that much more sophisticated while still being expressive and informative, that we will get to all elevate at a faster pace than we used to.
Yeah, you touch on a fantastic point, and luckily enough, we had Baroy on to kind of hint at it. But the replays add another foundational level to what you could build on top of the game, whether that be some sort of visual recognition of the overhead viewer to generate, you know, heat maps, more in-depth statistics that somebody as a third party could develop. You can have 6 different bots view one replay through the POVs of each player and record every little intricate detail and put that into a number and ship it. And now you have a better understanding of what players are actually doing, how much they're doing, when and where they're doing things. This adds another level to the game that we can build on top of. But previously we didn't have it, right? So again, like there's so many more possibilities with replays. Like, and the more they add to it, the more we can expand on it as a community. Not me. I'm too dumb.
I wonder if this, because back in the day in WoW, and then before that CS, like we had that, you know, game movie culture and frag movie culture, and then not just game and frag movie, but also sort of like almost small movies or sketches.
Oh yeah, I remember like
there's
like a WoW like whole
illegal Danish.
There's like I have no idea. I always stumble across them every once in a while when I'm like on a WoW binge, but there's like an actual like series and like a story that people tell through like WoW machinima, like Warcraft movies. Like people can get pretty crazy with this stuff, and it's only gonna get better when Blizzard adds more and more tools, whether it's a model viewer, whether it's like a the workshop again, like you're gonna see some cool stuff come out of that.
Yeah,
it's already happening. It's only gonna get better from here with the more tools that they give us.
Yeah,
I love playing World of Warcraft. But like I was just thinking about it. Like, I don't know how it is that, and World of Warcraft is a very flawed game, right?
Sure.
I can't even get either of you guys to come play with me right now. That's how flawed it is. That neither of you guys will come play, hang out. I literally am just playing by myself. Well, actually, my wife now plays a bunch, but it's very flawed, but at the same time, it's something I want to go back and play. Overwatch has a problem where it's not. It's not right now.
Yeah.
That's it for a lot of people. And I can tell you right now, most analysts, most content creators making content for Overwatch aren't actually actively playing the game.
No, I tell you right now, I haven't touched the game in a minute.
And it's largely because there's so little to be gained from that experience. It requires so much time to make that content outside of the experience. I would just love for there to be a thing where I would love for the time I want to spend in a game be equal to the amount of content that I can create for it. That's just all I want.
Yeah.
That's all I want. It's not easy. And like some people are like, oh, Sideshow or Brent. I mean, most of the analysts in Overwatch League are, plat diamond, right? But understand the game. It's very interesting to know that the biggest, brightest, I think a Sideshow and calling him a bright mind, but he's actually very smart. Brightest minds in Overwatch are people who have found that it's more beneficial to not play the game and seek knowledge and learning and analysis elsewhere. And
I think that to highlight Yiska's point, because it's literally two different books.
Yeah.
It's so different that there's no point. You might as well just go watch the game and you probably get a little bit more enjoyment out of it.
Yeah. Dude, one of the main parts always for me for watching esports was always to say, okay, let's watch how, in the Overwatch equivalent, Jonak play. Oh, Jonak always plays very close to his diva. Okay, so I will always play close to his diva. You just flew over this gap on Rialto and I can't follow. And what are you doing? And why are you in their backline? And where's my matrix? And I cannot peek this angle. Oh, I actually can peek this angle because this Widow can't aim whatsoever. And it's like, okay, this game is completely different to what it's played. I'm not being speed boosted. No Lucio's ever looking at me. Lucio's are trying to frag. It's like, or by the way, I'm already lying because nobody plays Lucio to like masters, deep masters. So yeah, it is so much different.
Yeah, and sometimes you're not going to fix that. You're not going to fix the one trick problem. You're not going to fix people being silly and just playing Reddit Lucio, but streamlining a lot solves a good deal of your problems. I think making it 2-2-2, removing a lot of the freedom that you're balancing. I think a lot of the balance weight is reliant on the freedom. You as a player base just have to figure it out. I don't know the answer to Goats, guys. Figure it out.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to Dive. And again, like we talk about Goats being oppressive, Dive was also really, really oppressive. You didn't play much else. There wasn't much.
Though it didn't go for as long.
I have no idea.
But you also didn't have the grand stage of Overwatch League for the entirety of Dive, right? We only had 2.5, 3 stages of it, right? In Overwatch League?
Yeah. I think like 3, and then the 4th was kind of like when Double Sniper kind of.
So it probably feels a lot different when you watch Goats every week on Overwatch League versus watching Dive for half a season of Overwatch League, but then you're watching it for Apex and you're watching it for Takeover and you're watching it for monthly Melee. There's different implications there for sure.
this also makes it like in regards to 222, this makes it really difficult for the game to change at a fundamental level again, because what you learned in Dive was tangentially related to goats, but it was so completely different everywhere else. Like the heroes, obviously, that's the obvious, like you have a whole role in DPS. You have DPS or players that play DPS, right? Their role is now flipped on its head. They have to learn new heroes. The composition is not really intuitive to what it was. It was such a completely black and white, day and night flip-flop, like whiplash inducing of what Dive was and what Goats was. So with 222, I think that definitely stems the possibility that that happens again, and you can kind of expect what Overwatch can look like generally, and you can plan for that more. You can scout for that. You can kind of, I think players can kind of position themselves for a meta at some point, whether you're a Widow specialist, whether you're this, that, the other thing, like that should be acceptable at some point. But with, you know, with the non 222, that might not be the case. It might just be Goats forever at this point. I don't know. But it stems the tide of just completely changing the way that the game's played at a base level.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we probably should get out of here. We've actually gone long. I didn't think that we'd be able to fill it.
Yeah.
We actually filled it up. I can't send messages in Discord anymore, but we kind of filled it up. All right, come on, Discord. Has it been struggling for you guys the last couple days sending messages?
Off and on.
At times, yeah. At times, actually, that happens to me. Yeah.
Kind of rough, but we did. We kind of hit our time, and we just posted a 2-hour episode 2 days ago. So I don't want to like overflow people. Like 2.5 hours of tactical crouch is enough, but you got 3 hours and 15 minutes of tactical crouch this week. So you're welcome for those with the commute. Sorry for those without, because yeah, that's gonna be a long one. Good conversation though. I'm glad that we finally got to fit that one in. It's it's kind of nice. We always kind of have to equate things back to Overwatch League and competitive Overwatch, but it's kind of nice when we can have a conversation that isn't directly about, which team is doing this, or let's talk about the specific players. It's just kind of fun. So
yeah. Change of pace.
Yeah, good time. So let's go ahead and get out of here. Before we do, though, make sure to follow the show everywhere at tactical_crouch. DM us, tweet us, whatever, thoughts, questions about the show. Leave a 5-star iTunes review. We really appreciate it. Those reviews help a ton with people being able to find the podcast. Also make Joe and Yiska feel good about themselves. So, not me, though. So
can I reveal one riddle?
Yes.
And attach a prize to it? I cannot believe. Not even chat noticed. Over the course of this episode, I've been gesturing with over a dozen different props. Like, I gestured literally with like a milk can type of thing. I had a nose hair trimmer. I had like an old milk carton. I used my cell phone. Okay, here's the deal, chat. The first guy that accurately counts with how many different props I gestured this episode will get a sub donated by me. And it has been over a dozen, and nobody noticed. This is the greatest day. Let me make this point with the trash can. I was actually preparing for PvP and revealing that on the last question.
So I did I kept noticing. I was like, is that a nose trimmer? It's like, why does he have that in his hand? And
then later, now that you notice it, I'm like, yeah, you did have the nose trimmer. Yeah, you did have the milk carton. It was just like,
oh man, next level stuff. By the way,
yeah, well done.
Yeah,
too good. All right, I just thought everyone just thought you were a weird. So,
well, that's obviously that's
part of the magic.
Yeah, I get it. Nice. Well, so follow everywhere at Tactical Crouch. Leave those 5-star iTunes reviews. Do you know how many specifically there are, Yiska? So if people guess in chat right now.
Yeah, I do.
All right, chat. If you guess correctly, we know it's over a dozen. If you guess correctly, Yiska's gonna gift you a sub. to this channel, or you're gonna sub to their channel?
To this channel, and it also counts on the YouTube.
All right, cool. We've got guesses coming in right now. Let me know if someone finds it. In the meantime,
I don't think anyone has got it yet.
In the meantime, yeah, follow us everywhere at Tactical Crouch. Leave that 5-star review. We'll start thinking 5-star reviews on the show starting next week. I do think that we are finally at the point where enough people have brought it up that I'm going to say it on the episode. I think that we're going to actually launch that Patreon. So stay tuned for that. It's probably gonna be on the old OWL daily one if I can change the URL, just because it's already all up there set up. So I think it even links in like the YouTube and show notes stuff. So there's already a link there for that. If you want to be, don't pay attention to any of the rewards yet because we're still gonna finalize those. But yeah, let's do kind of shout outs for the week and where people can find you. Joe, you're up first.
Well, as always, you can find me on the old socials at Volamel. It's pretty much everywhere. Just put up an article detailing what the Chengdu Hunter's new main tank, or not so new if you realize that he's been signed to the team but just has been locked away in visa jail, what he means to the team, and what my kind of thoughts on him, maybe possibly not necessarily playing in stage 3. I think definitely give it a look if you're a Chengdu fan, and what you might expect later on and what he means to the team.
Cool.
Hopefully that I'll be a lord.
Yiska, what about you, man? Shout outs for the week. Where can people find you?
First and foremost, I was about to say Takeover 3. It kind of feels like that. Atlantic Showdown, of course. And maybe I'll squeeze out like a little primer tomorrow. We'll see. Maybe not. We'll see. And definitely looking forward to that.
Cool. Yeah. As for me, you can find me everywhere at KickedTripod, and I'm doing a ton of stuff. I'm going to be out the next week. Yiska, have fun at Atlantic Showdown.
Thank you.
You're going to DreamHack?
Yep, I'm going to be at DreamHack Dallas. We're going to be doing a couple things. For those who don't know, I work for Helicon Gaming, so we make that cool little Go XLR device. And so I do all the community, social media, and like digital strategy for that. And so they're flying myself, our brand lead, and our DSP engineer out. And we're outfitting all of the streamer booths with Go XLR, which is pretty cool. But we're also doing a panel on audio for Twitch. So for people who are looking to, it's not going to be just like shilling Go XLR for a couple of hours, because I've gone through every audio setup under the sun. Go XLR is finally the thing that I use now, but there's a lot of cheap free options that you can do and all that stuff. So we're going to be doing that. I believe it's going to be streamed. So stay tuned for all that. But otherwise, find me everywhere at KickedTripod, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. I'm going to probably be posting a ton from Instagram over the next week. So yeah. All right. Well, that's going to do it. Thanks for joining us for episode 36. We're going to be back. Do Volamel and Yiska have Go XLR setups? No, but there's a plan in place. Wink. The plan in place. We gotta get you that headphone extender, by the way. Don't let you forget. So yeah. Other than that, big thanks to everybody who tuned in today. We're gonna be back after the music for a little post-show action, and see if anybody has won how many devices Yiska has.
I will direct that. I copied the chat, so if someone won, then I will say that. Otherwise, the first YouTube comment.
All right, fair enough. All right, chat. We'll see you guys next time. See you after the music. We'll thank all the subs and donations because there's quite a few of you. So thanks for that. And if you want to support the show, people have asked quite a few times, like, how can I support the show? And besides just being, just tweeting any of us individually, being like, hey, I really like what you're doing with the show, following and listening and all that stuff, which is amazing. And 90% of it, you can subscribe at twitch.tv/KickedTripod, get some cool tactical crouch emotes. You can donate twitch.tv/KickedTripod. There's donations there. It all goes to improve the show. And then by the next show, I'm going to commit to it. We'll have our Patreon up and running with Tactical Crouch stuff. So I'll probably spend a little extra time talking about that. Cool? Cool. All right. We're going to be back in just a couple minutes. See you guys next time. Bye.